FM.
AP.
I'm Jessica Ettinger, CNBC. Wall Street setting up for a little pullback this morning after its best day since June 24th. Investors are bracing for more corporate earnings, and the European Union is proposing gas rationing. Twitter with a small victory in its battle to sell itself to Elon Musk for the amount he agreed to pay. Delaware has ordered a speedy trial to start in October. Musk's team wanted it put off till next year. Netflix is bleeding subscribers with almost 1 million leaving the service in the last quarter. But that was fewer than forecast. It says a cheaper tier with ads is coming next year, along with that promised crackdown on customers sharing their passwords. Mortgage demand plunged to a 22-year low last week. Higher interest rates, record home prices, and inflation have been crushing would-be home buyers. And Macy's opening Toys R Us toy shops inside more than 400 Macy's stores. Jessica Ettinger, CNBC.
Are you the parent of a 2 to 7-year-old? Listen closely for an exciting free radio offer. By now, you've probably heard of ABC Mouse, the Parents' Choice Award-winning online learning program that's actually changing the lives of early learners everywhere.
ABC Mouse is like a little one-on-one teacher. It has helped her so much.
Right now, we're offering a special radio promo to try it free for a month. But you have to go to abcmouse.com/radio to claim your free month. That's abcmouse.com/radio.
Sponsored by Age of Learning.
This is your captain speaking. You better buckle your seatbelts for this one. I noticed my passport was due to expire, so I went to Staples. I got a passport photo in 10 minutes, so we're good to go.
Now at Staples, get 20% off travel products when you purchase a passport photo. Get travel ready at Staples, your one-stop travel prep destination.
Let me tell you about another time that Staples saved my caboose. That all started back.
N731, in-store only. Excludes Instacart orders, certain products, services, and technology. See staplesconnect.com/services/travel for details.
Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Are you underpaid and overworked? Is a living wage and employee benefits like affordable health care more of a dream than a reality for you and your family? If so, it's time to form a union. Don't be denied the wages and benefits you deserve. Come together in a union with the power of numbers. A union is not a privilege, it's your right, and it will make a difference. Contact Teamsters Local 1932, a powerful and successful labor union in San Bernardino, by visiting teamsters1932.org/organize to start today. I'm Rick Smith, host of The Rick Smith Show, inviting you to listen to my show during the noon hour every weekday right here on KCAA. My show is sponsored locally by Teamsters 1932, a strong union with 14,000 members in the IE. Our message is clear. Unions improve the lives of working people. You have a right to form and join a union, so go to Teamsters1932.org and get started now.
Are you graduating high school soon and wondering what to do next? College is one option, but why not consider the high-paying jobs made possible by union power? Labor Union Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get you into the high school to high-paying job pipeline. You'll learn all the skills needed to excel in opportunities across industries. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show on KCAA. We'll be right back after this message from our sponsor, Teamsters 1932, a strong union with 14,000 members in the IE. Go to Teamsters1932.org for more information.
Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about, lots going on in Washington, D.C. Congress, a little active, some activity going on in the nation's capital. 35 arrested in front of the Supreme Court building today. 17 members of Congress among those arrested, according to the Capitol Police. AOC, one of them. I guess you had Ilhan Omar and Presley, all of the squad folks. Cori Bush, them. You had Andy Levin from Michigan, Jackie Spirey, Alma Adams, Carolyn Maloney. Had a bunch of folks saying, hey, that thing you did, Supreme Court, overturning that thing that's important to us, we're not happy about it. Now, where they should be and where they need to be in Congress getting this passed, we need to be mobilizing, energizing, activating, engaging, educating, go down the list of all the things we need to be doing to get voters to the polls in November, to get people who are going to say, you know what, we respect a woman's right to choose. We expect people to have the right to privacy. We don't want an overreaching, overburdensome, overpowerful government. And this is something conservatives used to believe in. We don't want government in our lives. Isn't that what they told us? Well, this is what they have done. So you have these members of Congress who were arrested, and some of the interesting things, and this is one of those, that I kind of agree with. If you're arrested, they usually drag you downtown. They make you go through all the fingerprinting, make you go through the picture stuff. No, they just moved him off to the side, issued a ticket, and went on about the day. Again, interesting. I'm of the mindset we pack the jails, we pack things up, we pack up the court systems, and we do what needs to be done to make this the issue front and center, if it's that important. And I think that it is. I think this is one of those moments where this is an important issue. Now, Democrats are doing what they need to be doing, also in Congress. I do find it interesting that they did pursue a vote to codify same-sex marriage and interracial marriage. The vote on the bill Respect for Marriage Act in the House ended up getting, 347, 340 some members of Congress voted for it. Actually, 267 to 157. 47 Republicans voted with all of the Democrats. Surprisingly and shockingly, and I give credit where credit is due, my Congressman Scott Perry, who I do not like, will not vote for. He has done virtually nothing that I agree with. He did support the Respect for Marriage Act. So on this, I give him the credit that he deserves for being on the right side of this issue. But sorry, Scott, no pardon for you. Still, want you held accountable. Would love to see you fitted with a nice set of bracelets, a nice jumpsuit, a nice new home with no view. That I would like to see. But on this, good on you for standing up for marriage equality. And this is one of those things where you go, we should be doing more of this. In fact, on Wednesday, there's a scheduled vote on the Right to Contraception Act. This would protect a person's ability to access contraceptives and to engage in contraception. This is what it says, and to protect a healthcare provider's ability to provide contraception, contraceptives, and information related to contraception. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where even talking about birth control could get you landed in jail. I'm expecting that down the road. But they're pushing for a vote. And this is, again, what has to happen. Because understand, as I've been saying for a very long time, our friends on the Republican side of the aisle hate working families, and these are working family issues. These are important issues. And this is a moment. This is an important moment. Like, Democrats need to understand this. They need to go issue after issue after issue. Collective bargaining should be on the table. We should be going, you know what? Which side of this issue are you on? The right to health care. Which side of this issue are you on? Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all down the list. We should have votes. They should be plain, they should be simple, and they should be simply to go, which side are you on? Which side of the 20th century are you on? Are you on the side of moving forward with what we've built in the 20th century, or going backwards, moving us back to the good old days of the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s? This is important because far too many of our friends on the extreme right, they want to return us back to the days of the Stone Age. This not good. Not good for workers, not good for families, not good for anyone but the upper echelon, the well-to-do, the well-connected, the well-heeled, of which most of us are not. And this is that moment. This is that moment where Democrats do what Republicans are going to do to you after November if they get a hold of the House. Use the power of hearings, use the power of investigations, use the power of the vote. Nail people down. Look, I've got union brothers and sisters who tell me, no, Democrats are worse for union members than Republicans are. There are actually union members who believe that Republicans care about them. There are actually working people who go, no, the Republicans, they care about us. They gave us those tax cuts for about 6 minutes. They say nice words to us. They give us words. But yet all down the line, you look at the heavily Republican states. Higher poverty rates, less health insurance rates, lower retirement security, deadlier workplaces, lower wages, lower benefits, all down the line. Worse standard of living, higher death rates, higher infant mortality rates. All of the negatives in red states go up, and the things that as a society I think we want to think are good things all go down. And you go, how is that? Well, bad policy. It's policy that does this. There's no invisible market hand. There's no invisible thing that's making things better. Smart policy, sound investment. And in places that do that, in places that, like I say, you want to change the world, change your little corner of it. In places that do that actively, people have better standards of living. In places that go, no, we're going to allow the will of the market to decide. Well, not so great. Also, another vote I found interesting. This was the one that had 394 votes. Purely a symbolic vote in the House. And look, the House does this a lot. There are a lot of those symbolic votes that I think are important, and this being one of them. 394 members of the House, both Democrats and Republicans, voted to support Finland and Sweden entering into NATO. Now understand, the House has no power in this whatsoever. Purely a symbolic vote. That responsibility is in the Senate, and we'll see how the Republicans react in the Senate. But you had 18 Republicans who were against the idea of Finland and Sweden entering into NATO, and we know who they are. They're the crazy caucus. And I'll be honest, I really thought there'd be more than 18. Only 18 crazy, far out, extreme Republicans. You know the ones. The Andy Biggs, the Dan Bishops, the Lauren Boeberts. Gun Fetish Barbie had to be there. Madison Cawthorn, Ben Klein, Michael Cloud, Warren Davidson from Ohio, Matt Gaetz still trying to keep himself out of jail in Florida, Bob Good not doing such a great job, Marjorie Trader Green, Morgan Griffith, Thomas Massey, McClintock from California, Mary Miller from Illinois, Ralph Norman, Rosendale from Montana, who you never hear his name, Chip Roy from Texas, and the former Democrat turned really crazy Republican Jefferson Van Drew. Those are your 18 who said, no, let us side with Russia. I don't know. I don't know if you we'll see how that plays out. But to their narrow base, to the Trumpkins of the world, that's going to maybe raise them some money. I'm sure the Putin money will come in any day now. There were 19 lawmakers, 17 Republicans, and 2 Democrats who did not vote. It used to be in the old days that these kind of purely symbolic things they went through with no problem. But here you go. So I'm curious your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. In looking at this, we're in this moment. Which side? Which side are you on the 20th century? What's next? For me, if I'm the Democrats every day until the midterms, I'm bringing up something new. Which side are you on? Which side of history will you be on? And being able to go to the voters and going, look, you think we're bad? You think we're bad? Oh, just wait. Understand, we've gotten nothing done on climate change. We're seeing stories coming out of Europe of runways melting. The Royal Navy can't get off the ground at its largest Air Force base because the runway is literally melting. And yet we can't seem to go, yeah, something needs to be done. Now, there was talk of President Biden declaring a state of emergency this week on climate change. That has not happened. They're kind of pulling back on that. They're holding off, I guess. I guess there are some things that they can do, but not a lot without Congress. I did find the quote from Joe Manchin hysterical because he said on ABC News, quoted by ABC News, when asked if he was supportive of President Biden declaring a national climate emergency, he said, well, let's see what Congress does. The Congress needs to act. The Congress needs to act, he says. The Congress needs to act, says a member, that's right, a member of Congress. Our esteemed senator from West Virginia is the guy who's been Lucying this party from the beginning. Yeah, I support it. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do something. And at the last second, no, we're not going to do anything. Now, what's interesting, as is being reported, a majority in all but 3 states in this country believe Congress should do something. A majority of people, of you, me, all of us, a majority say, hey, we should act. Those 3 states, one of them just happens to be West Virginia. Because understand, so focused on all we have is the coal. They're going to take the coal and they're going to give us nothing. And I've seen this firsthand myself. When we did our labor history tour back in 2013, we were going to the site where the Battle of Blair Mountain happened. And at the time, the coal companies were literally trying to remove the mountain. They had removed everything else. There was no town left. There was no infrastructure left. A place where 1 million shots were fired in this war on workers. And there was nothing left. They, at that time, wanted to do away with the mountain. When we showed up, there were probably 30, 35 people who just surrounded us out of nowhere. I mean, we were literally dropped in the middle of nowhere. All you could see were trees for as far as the eye could see. And yet at this point, in all directions came carloads of people with their Friends of Coal hats and their Friends of Coal T-shirts and their big giant belt buckles and their hats. Oh, and don't forget the large sidearms. And they were there, what you doing around here kind of thing. And it came down to they thought we were there to badmouth coal. We're gonna take their coal. And what was interesting is at the time, the guys who were there, who had the big guns and the big hats and the big belt buckles, they were actually working for the companies who were just screwing them, trying to screw them out of their pensions and out of their health care. And, when you started talking about that, going, explain to me why you're out here attempting to threaten and intimidate me when all I want to talk about is history, when you're being literally robbed blind right to your face, and you're still fighting for the people who are robbing you. It's quite amazing. Quite remarkable stuff. Let's quick go to the phone lines. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are we today?
We're doing fine. What I wanted to say was, okay, fine. So we had the vote in the House on the marriage equality, or what have you. I can't recall the precise wording. But do we really think that's going to pass in the Senate?
No.
I mean...
No, but this is the reason this is important, Alice, and this is where I go with this. And these votes are really important, is to get them on the record so that when you go into the elections, you can point to the reality, because we're looking for the 5 to 10% of voters who know nothing. They don't pay attention. They're not engaged. They're not informed. You want to be able to go to them and go, here, this is who the other side is. There's too many people are saying there's no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. These votes are an opportunity to go, here, this is the difference. Do you believe in the rights of women to choose their course in life, what they do with their body? Do you believe in the rights of people to be able to choose how many children they're going to have with contraception? Do you believe that families should be able to do what they're going to do with regards to whatever? Do you think workers should have rights? Consumers should have rights? We should be banging these votes out to go, these are the differences. This is what makes us Democrats. This is what makes them Republicans, and go from there. I know none of this is going to actually become law or even matter, because the Supreme Court will just shoot it down anyway, but this is why you have to have people informed, educated, engaged. At least that's my thought.
Well, that's true. And I understand that. My whole thing, I think what I want to get to is I think that we may be a little bit past saving anything. And even looking at the climate change, the way it's accelerating, I'm at the point going, okay, if we're going to have the meteor come and just finish it fall off, let's do it now instead of dragging this out. But, yeah, you're right. People need to pay attention. Unfortunately, that 10% that we're talking about, a lot of them get their news on Facebook. So, education, yeah, is definitely a must.
And that's where Democrats need to get better at messaging, and they need to start putting out their messages in those places. They need to be fighting in those places. And that's the problem with Democrats. They don't do that. They haven't done it. They gave up the talk radio space years ago. They gave up the cable news space years ago. They've given up almost on the internet. They got to get out there. And this is where Gavin Newsom is right. They got to do a much better job of communicating.
Exactly. Time to fight. But you have a good evening.
Thank you, Alice. Appreciate it. To me, that simple. Got to do a better job. Got to do a better job. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, going to talk a little bit about the January 6th committee hearing. Might not be the final one after all. There might be more to come. Also, your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You miss any of the program or any of our programs, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you will find ours. Always there, always available, or just go to thericksmithshow.com. Right back after this. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So interesting story today that evidently there's a 48-page internal group of emails from the Department of Defense that Insider.com got a hold of how military leaders were monitoring the January 6th attack on the Capitol. And again, had this gone just a little bit more awry, it would have been our military who would have had to decide, do you come in and throw Trump out? Do you stand by and stand back and stand down and allow Trump to continue and hope the courts deal with it and him not leaving? Interesting kind of bit of theory. I do have some hope that General Milley would have done the right thing, but I don't know that he would have been. I don't know that he would have had many people behind him. It's one of those things. Glad we didn't have to find out. Also, we're finding out the January 6th committee is extending the inquiry. They wanted to wrap up, I guess, by September was the goal. But evidently, there's just stuff that just keeps coming in. With the very best people, especially with Cassidy Hutchinson, and now with coming up this Thursday, the big hearing coming. Evidently, a lot more of the rats are jumping ship. Now, remember, I don't view any of these people as heroes. I don't view them particularly as brave. I think these are people who just want to keep their you-know-whats out of jail. They want to keep their things out of a sling, so to speak. And they're coming forward saying, this is what I know, this is what happened, and obviously painting themselves in a better light, which you have to understand that that's going to happen to keep themselves out of jail. But we're going to see how this goes on. Now, all the TV networks have agreed. I guess ABC, NBC, CBS, they're going to preempt all of their normal programming. Fox evidently says the hearings will be available to affiliates in the event that they wish to televise them in their markets. This is their way of saying, well, maybe, or maybe we're just going to air our normal propaganda and nonsense. Yeah, that's kind of where it's at. Also, Benny Thompson, not going to be front and center, evidently has COVID, but he will be there via the Zoom, Skype, the video conferencing, whatever. The hearings, though, Thursday are going to be led by Republican Representative Adam Kinzinger and Democratic Representative Elaine Lurie. That will be interesting to see where they go to wrap this, because the thought was this was going to be the grand finale. This was going to be the wrap up, and I'm still kind of being told maybe could be explosive. Looking forward to it. What I was hoping is to get a hold of the texts from our Secret Service. Evidently, according to the January 6th committee, the Secret Service has failed to deliver those texts. And I'll tell you right now, I don't believe they've failed. I believe they chose not to. Because, well, it's easier to take a beating. They're saying, oh, well, we just couldn't find them. Oh, hey, they got accidentally deleted. Oh, it's some screw up. It's easier to look inept and take the beating for being inept than for going, okay, here it is. Here's how bad it really was. So I think this is interesting, and it's a question that the Biden administration has to start thinking about. How secure is our president, given the fact that our Secret Service, wow, so deep in the bag for the former guy that they're going to erase text messages? Because I don't buy for a second that they just, oops, we lost them. Not buying it at all. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, podcast, get that at thericksmithshow.com or wherever you get your favorite podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day San Francisco's Central Labor Council voted narrowly to end the general strike, then in its fourth day. It had been one of 3 historic strikes that turned the tide towards industrial organizing in the 1930s. It emerged as part of the ongoing longshoremen strike, which started in May. The decision was controversial. Longshoremen and seamen raged that leadership of the strike had been torn from them by more conservative elements. As author of Workers on the Waterfront, Bruce Nelson puts it, after 2.5 months on strike, literally thousands of arrests, at least 6 deaths, and hundreds of serious injuries, the men and their families were holding the line. But their allies were gradually cutting the ties of solidarity that had been the strike's lifeblood. The shipping bosses forced a vote for arbitration from the longshoremen and without the seamen. As Nelson notes, this served to drive a wedge between the two unions, creating a rift that would only deepen. The two would continue to strike until the end of July. but the strike left the longshoremen emboldened. They pushed back on the job, driving off scabs and establishing work rules and conditions ahead of the arbitrator's ruling, which came in October. The hiring hall was finally established. While it was decided that the union and the shipping bosses would rule the hall jointly, the union controlled the position of dispatcher. This meant that the union determined hiring, which put an end to the despised shape-up. The award also mandated wage raises and a coast-wide contract. It would serve as a catalyst for the founding of the ILWU 3 years later.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Although we haven't even gotten through this year's midterm congressional elections, it's still not too early to start examining some of the characters who hope you'll make them president in 2024. I know you don't want to, but we must. That's because corporate elites have already chosen their favorites, and they intend to use massive sums of money, lies, more money, PR slickum, and even more money to slide their toady into the Oval Office, hoping you don't discover until it's too late that their chosen one really is a toad. Take Ron DeSantis. The GOP's far-right, power-hungry, narcissistic Florida governor promises to be the next Donald Trump, only more effective and not as nice. For example, his favorite gubernatorial hobby is the Orwellian practice of monitoring and censoring people's speech and thoughts, culling out ideas he deems objectionable. Don't say gay is his most infamous dictate to the state's teachers, but he has also outlawed any teachings that might, quote, denigrate the Founding Fathers. Nor will he tolerate the study of institutional racism in America. Indeed, he has even mandated that social studies textbooks, get this, must not include concepts of social justice. Ron adamantly opposes what right-wingers call a woke society. He wants one that's asleep, sound asleep. He recently rallied his right-wing cadre to ban some math textbooks. Yes, math. They screeched that some real-life topics like wage disparities are being used to make math problems relevant to today's students. So it was Fahrenheit 451 for those books. Thus far, DeSantis' censorship binge has nixed 42 math books for, quote, incorporating prohibited topics. This is Jim Hightower saying, did I mention that DeSantis is also forming his own gubernatorial military force? A state army he can deploy in emergencies. What's an emergency? He says he'll decide.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this is interesting. You know, I just brought up General Milley a second ago, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And what has happened is, I guess he's ordered his staff to gather information about interactions between the U.S. military and the Chinese military over the last 5 years. To review any of the interactions that have gone on with the Chinese military in the South China Sea and beyond. This kind of interesting, and it kind of got me questioning, you know, I've got questions here to answer. Maybe some of them, if he's got thoughts on if this is important or not. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it is great to be with you as always.
So I saw this story, and I'm looking through it, and I'm going, you know, I think we should have some guidelines. We should know who's talking to who and who's making deals with who on both sides of this, since a lot of money flows around, a lot of influence throws around, especially when I look at General Flynn. I got questions. Is this a deal? Is this a big deal? Something I should be concerned about? Thoughts?
Yeah, Rick, this is a great question, and it's unfortunate that we have to ask it, right? Yeah, I mean that's one place where you want to count on fidelity. I think at the highest ranks of our military over the last few years, and so we'll see what comes out of this. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a top secret clearance. You don't have a top secret clearance, and so we'll see kind of where this investigation leads. But it does kind of like unwrap a couple of key concerns here. One is the sophistication of China's intelligence and counterintelligence in the United States, geared at U.S. institutions and individuals, and certainly keeping track of dissidents and critics as well of the regime. And doing this through physical means as well as through cyber means, has some of the most sophisticated capabilities around the world.
Yeah.
And we don't, we hear about the Russians and all of this, but the Chinese are major players in all of this. And so I think that's important. And you raised up the kind of like the military, I guess conflict or collaboration or whatever is going on. But I think this is important because it's clear the Chinese military itself is wanting to exert more dominance over a larger amount of area that goes outside of basically Chinese sea lanes or airspace or what have you, and that could lead to potentially deadly, catastrophic encounters that could have much graver consequences down the road. So it is very important to get a handle on all of this.
No, and look, at the end of this, and I just had this conversation last night with a friend, I look at manufacturing, the stuff that you do, the focus on reshoring manufacturing, bringing jobs back, increasing our ability to produce domestically for domestic consumption. I view manufacturing as a national security issue. First and foremost, this is, it's that simple. Manufacturing is a national security issue, especially when we're looking at China, because we've basically given them our manufacturing capacity. And are we now not surprised that we're dependent on them, especially in times of pandemic and crisis? And you guys literally wrote the book back in 2013 of all of our dependence, and it's only gotten worse from 2013. Have you guys ever thought of redoing that and saying it was bad back in 2013 and now it's even worse? Because look, I think the average person doesn't really realize just how dependent we are.
Yeah, it first of all, thank you, Rick. We literally did write the book, as you mentioned, back in 2013, the big, thick book. I know you have a copy of it. What I guess gives us a little bit of solace right now is that there are a lot of organizations, including the federal government, that are doing these assessments now, in part so we don't have to, right? And so I'd much rather have federal agencies looking at this, which they have been in the Biden administration, this comprehensive supply chain review that was 1,400 pages, makes ours look like a little kid's book, basically. And so I'm glad that they're exploring it. But I think you're right. I don't know that the average citizen knows just how dependent we are. Like, for instance, for our solar energy future, basically 90% of the stuff that we, installed in the United States is of Chinese origin, directly or indirectly. That's probably quite shocking to people. No. Or the lithium that goes into lithium-ion batteries, and how much of that is processed in China, which is the vast majority, like 70%. And so we do have to open more eyes, I think. But I do think, and clearly our work was a modest contribution to that. But I think over the last couple of years, and the pandemic brought this into focus as well, right? That I think there's at least among our policymakers, a greater understanding of some of the vulnerabilities that we have as a country. But and I'll just close with this thought on this question. One of the major obstacles, Rick, to all of this is the big global companies who don't care. And they look at the Chinese market and they're like, you know what, we're happy to have you as partners because we're going to make a ton of bank here.
It's all about the money.
Yeah, and if we're mortgaging our innovation or our security that's something that's not of grave concern.
No, and you're right. I mean, it's a short term. It's their short term thinking. The next quarter, how much they can put in their pocket, as opposed to the Chinese who are thinking, 5, 25, 100 years into the future. But I keep this book near my desk. It's Remaking American Security: Supply Chain Vulnerabilities and National Security Risks Across the U.S. Defense industrial base. This is literally 350 pages of all the things that we're not doing. In fact, one of the things you talk about in this book, I just looked it up, is our vaccines. The fact that there's you have a policy in there that was seemed quite clairvoyant, that we needed to invest in 2013 to deal with what ended up happening in 2020.
Yeah, that's totally true. Is that a lot of our active pharmaceutical ingredients and other pharmaceutical related products are sourced from China. We expose that. We expose semiconductors, which obviously is a hot topic right now, and lithium-ion batteries and a lot of that stuff. And it's just like, I wish that. I think our failing, I guess, in a way, is that we didn't move the needle. I think we raised the issues up and people were like, oh, that's great. But unfortunately, and this, that we wait until there's a crisis to respond, and then it's more costly. Our options aren't as good, and our outcomes aren't as good as well. And so hopefully we can continue to raise up some of these issues, and people will listen to us, because we're not Chicken Little here. Everything that we said in that report has basically been borne out, and is proven to be an extraordinary vulnerability.
No, you bring up the semiconductors, and in fact, again, in the report, important part of the report, and yet we still can't get the CHIPS Act passed, which you've got Mitch McConnell and them trying to hold that hostage so that they can keep drug prices high, while investment in that plant in Columbus that's supposed to be helpful, investment in plants across this country that would get us less dependent on China, less dependent on foreign companies, just languishes. And this, again, I come back to that basic premise that I have said all 17 years doing this: manufacturing is a national security issue. If we're not making stuff, we're dependent.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm going to suggest on semiconductors, there is a glimmer of hope here, because I saw kind of late breaking news that the CHIPS Act survived a procedural vote, got 64 votes to advance. That's not final passage, but as in the Senate, if you get 60 votes, you're golden, right? And so that was a good start. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the good trade stuff that had been in there in the House of Representatives is not in there right now, and so we'll have to go back and take care of that. But I do think that there's at least this understanding, and I also, and I'm trying to think of the way to put this, because I don't support everything the semiconductor industry does. I think that they invest too much in China. All these companies who are going to benefit from this also invest in China. That's kind of, unfortunately, their market reality. But I will say, and I will give them this industry credit, that as an industry, they realized they needed to invest in American manufacturing, and they needed to build new factories, and those factories are extraordinarily expensive, and governments all around the world are paying for these things, and so we're kind of the last holdout there. And so for this industry to say, you know what, we want to partner with the government, we want to do this, and we're going to scale up semiconductor manufacturing to get us, approaching the market share that we had 3 decades ago, is a pretty important development.
Yeah, but Scott, don't you think at some point radical self-interest has to play here? Because there's a reality that we may not be the global superpower to protect their intellectual property rights, to protect them on any level. There's got to be a moment of awakening that, what we came to believe as the baseline is no longer going to be the baseline of privacy, of corporate rights, of patent rights. That's no longer the baseline. The Chinese are going to set that, the Chinese government, and they're going to steal it.
That's right. You nailed it. I think that's the problem, is that, if they're banking on China, they know eventually a company, a national company, is going to take over that market, right? They're just essentially a placeholder that's going to funnel in innovation and investment into China, and the government or a big company in China is going to take that over, number one. And number two, and here's the other thing about the semiconductor industry, what's not based in China is based in Taiwan. And Taiwan is an ally, is a partner, but Taiwan could well be caught up in a conflict, a major conflict like Russia-Ukraine, right, with China. And then what happens to the supplies of semiconductors? So I think the industry, I think you're right. It's a lot of it is enlightened self-interest. And when most of their customer base, I mean, we consume like 20% at least of the world's semiconductors, and we make 11 or 12% of them. So when your customer base is here, it does make sense to locate production here. And they're a little late to that game, but what, better late than never. And the factory announcements that have been made by Texas Instruments, Intel, Global Foundries, TMSC, Applied, AMD, all these companies. This is a big deal for the ecosystem in the United States and building it back up.
Yeah. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website. If you want to take a look at the work that they do, by all means, we'll get links out on social media. How you can take a look at that. I want to get your thought on this Leveling the Playing Field Act, this competitive and innovation legislation that is going on right now, that you guys are running a program around, a campaign around to get the Senate to support. Tell me a little bit about what this is.
Yeah, so I mentioned that the competitiveness bill, which has been dramatically scaled down, just survived a test vote in the Senate. One of the things that's left out of there that we'd like to see get back in are trade provisions, and the reason why is this: you can invest all that you want in American industry, and I think that's a good thing. But unless you have a level playing field, unless you have trade enforcement mechanisms, the imports are just going to swamp all of these efforts, subsidized or dumped imports. And so giving our policymakers, giving our trade ambassador more tools to fight against unfair trade practices, I think, is very important. And so that's why we're calling on Congress to include this legislation that is bipartisan. Sherrod Brown, Rob Portman from Ohio, two of the key authors in the Senate, to include this, and hopefully we can make it in this package. If not, we still have, and I think there's still an appetite to address China competition writ large beyond semiconductors. Maybe there will be an avenue for it, but this is something that we got to get done.
So how do people participate in this? What are we asking folks?
Yeah, so go to AmericanManufacturing.org. You can just click on the Take Action, and then it will tell you, based on your zip code or your state, whose office to call, and just pitch in a call. I know that we've heard from a bunch of our advocates that they've talked directly with Senate offices and have expressed their point of view on this. And over the course of this campaign, Rick, we've had 50,000 folks reach out to Capitol Hill, and so we'd love to have more join them. And of course, now is the time, because we're at the critical hour on this legislation.
Finally, I wanted to get your thoughts on the climate bill. It looks like Joe Manchin has loosied the Democratic Party once again. I know he's still playing footsie, saying, "Oh no, we're going to do something." I don't see him doing anything. This is killing the solar industry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's certainly not helpful right now. I'm going to have to borrow your lucid expression. I like that to describe kind of what he's been doing. And just to take the sports analogy a little bit further, this is just this is an unforced error, because we're scaling up solar deployment so much in the United States, and what it means that the climate package didn't pass. It had a lot of manufacturing tax incentives in it and other types of incentives for clean energy manufacturing in the United States, is that we'll simply be replacing that oil from Saudi Arabia or elsewhere with solar panels from China. And we'll be missing out on the manufacturing. And again,
and the jobs.
And the jobs, and the innovation, and all of that. And already you've seen one of the biggest solar manufacturers in the United States, First Solar, say that we're not going to locate another factory in the United States. It's just that that's not where the investment is telling us to go, and so it is hugely problematic. I mean, there's a company in Georgia that just broke ground on a new facility, and they're probably wondering if they're going to have a market for it because it's otherwise going to be swamped by imports. So we got to get this done. And again, if it's not going to happen now, it needs to happen after Labor Day when they come back.
It needs to happen soon. And look, while I beat up on Joe Manchin, there are also 50 Republicans who voted against this.
100% right. 100% right, Rick. It's going to take, every Democrat. There should be bipartisan support for this. There's so much clean energy in red states, Texas and Georgia, and states like that, that there ought to be support for these types of tax incentives to make sure that we have the jobs here, the innovation here, the manufacturing here, as well as the clean energy, the other renewable benefits here as well.
It's an absolute shame. But Scott, I appreciate you taking time for us. Hopefully check out the website, AmericanManufacturing.org. We'll get links out so you can participate in the campaign to get that Leveling the Playing Field Act moved forward. The CHIPS Act, also make sure we're calling our senators on that as well. But Scott, I appreciate the time.
Amen. Thank you so much, Rick. Have a great evening.
Good stuff. Our good friend Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Your thoughts, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1993. That was the day that President Bill Clinton announced his Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. He had campaigned for president, promising to allow all citizens to serve in the military, regardless of sexual orientation. Once he was elected, there was a great deal of opposition to his proposal. Military officials railed against the idea of lifting the ban on homosexuals in the military. Members of Congress and the public voiced opposition. President Clinton proposed a compromise he called Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This meant that military officials were not supposed to inquire about the sexual orientation of servicemen and women. Service members were not to be public about their sexual preference. This meant that if members of the LGBT community wanted to pursue a career in the military, they had to hide a significant part of who they were or risk losing their jobs. The policy stood in effect for nearly 2 decades. More than 12,000 officers lost their jobs because they refused to stay in the closet. It is also unknown how many more LGBT people decided not to apply for military service because of the discriminatory division. President Obama pledged to repeal the policy during his first election. It took 2 years after his election until Don't Ask, Don't Tell was finally ended by Congress. Some members of Congress issued dire warnings about repealing the discriminatory policy. But on the 5th anniversary of the repeal, President Obama issued this statement: "Today, Americans can serve the country they love, no matter who they love. And openly gay, lesbian, and bisexual men and women in uniform make our military stronger and America safer."
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I go back to it. Manufacturing is a national security issue. And that's again, something we can all, I don't think that's controversial. I think we can all agree on it. We should be making things here in this country. All of the things we need, we should be making, especially those things that we need for national security. For me, it's that simple. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Joe on line 1. Joe, how are you today? Joe, did you fall asleep? I think we lost Joe. Anyway, as I said, I think this is a national security issue. I think it's one of those things that really important that we make sure that we demand from our friends in Congress that they push policies that are going to make sure that we
that we invest smart policy in this kind of stuff, that we move forward in a way that ensures that we have the jobs and the manufacturing capacity that we need. So let's go to the phones. We got Cal on line 2. Cal, how are we doing today?
Well, first of all, we'll finish off the business. Can you hear me?
Sure, go.
Yeah. We'll finish off the Kavanaugh in his junior year of working at Yale. Remember that go around with me a month ago?
Sure.
Yes. He did get fired after 3 weeks of not showing up for work due to drunkenness.
Yep, I don't doubt it.
Yes. The new thing, my poster from back just late in Trump's reign warned us about all of the plants that he was leaving in different departments. Now it would sound like the EPA is only didn't plant enough people in, and now they're doing the dirty job. What's the organization where Trump tried to grab the steering wheel and they fought him off?
Oh, the Secret Service.
Yeah, the Secret Service. Yes. So now it appears that they were one of the infiltrated entities.
Yeah, are you as concerned as I am about the fact that these messages are deleted, or do you think all, I've had some people go, well, it's probably just embarrassing stuff, like, arranging hookers in different places, like the Secret Service has been known to do, maybe guys who were cheating on their wives using that communication. They didn't want that stuff getting out. I've had people say it's not that they were in the bag for Trump. It's that they were doing all of this other illicit stuff that they were trying to cover up. Do you buy any of that?
Quite possible.
Yeah, I'm of the
yes.
Yeah. That's plausible. It's quite plausible.
Yes. That's all I have. No. Yeah, I'm 87.
Oh, wow.
I'm lucky I made it through this conversation due to memory loss.
I doubt that, Cal. It sounds like your memory's a heck of a lot better than even mine.
One Smith says to another Smith, keep it going.
Good stuff, Cal. Thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate the call.
Bye-bye.
I love that guy. I love that guy. Look, give me 87 of those years. But no, I mean, seriously, on the Secret Service front, there's two ways of looking at this. One is they were totally in the bag for Trump, and they deleted all these messages because they were part of the cover-up. They were part of, and this, again, with the Pence thing, I'm not getting in that car. This kind of makes that, did he know how badly they were on Trump's side and wasn't getting in the car because he had no idea where they were going to ditch him? Or was it the other side of it? There's just a lot of impropriety, a lot of immorality, a lot of goings on that we don't want to shine light on. So we'll just take the hey, they're inept, hey, they're just bad at this. They'll take the beating for mishandling information, but not for what actually happened. Curious your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, make sure you grab the podcast. You can do that at thericksmithshow.com as well.
What we're seeing here indeed is an example of reaping what we've sown.
Simultaneous record deadly heat waves strike across the globe. Last month, tied for the hottest June ever recorded globally. Plus,
people like Manchin are intentionally sabotaging the president's agenda, what the American people want, what a majority of us in the Democratic caucus want.
Senator Joe Manchin again tanks Biden's climate and clean energy agenda.
Tanks for nothing. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You have this kind of heat over major populations, you get a big draw on that electric demand, and it looks like we may have just switched over to generator power. Our lights just went out.
That's right. The lights went out in the middle of the weather forecast warning about power outages on Houston's KTRK. It happened twice.
It did it again?
This is your Green News Report.
Is the AC on, Melanie? That's the important thing right there.
Okay, Desi Doyen, it's hard to not see this as exactly what you and so many climate scientists have been warning about so long, as the globe is pretty much just melting down this week.
It sure does seem like it. A persistent, intense, scorching heat wave continues to broil the northern hemisphere with historic new high temperature records across Europe, Asia, and the United States. In China, a billion...
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
NBC News Radio, I'm Lisa Taylor. President Biden is expected to show his support for offshore wind power and protecting Americans from extreme heat. The White House official says Biden will help communities facing extreme heat with additional national disaster funding to a program. It's uncertain what additional actions he'll announce regarding offshore wind power during his trip to Massachusetts. Former President Trump and 3 of his children are attending a funeral for Ivana Trump. The former president's first wife passed away last week after falling down the stairs in her home. Donald Jr., Eric, and Ivanka Trump were seen